Hello and welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to my first tutorial on my brand new tutorial channel. Well, I'm quite nervous because I have never done this before, and as you may already hear, or if you know me, I am no native English speaker. I am German. So first tutorial and foreign language. This will become interesting. So, what is the topic of our tutorial today? Audio visualization in Blender. Blender, if you don't know what it is at all, please go and watch some basic tutorials, because this is not a basic tutorial and I assume that you are quite experienced in Blender. You don't have to be a professional. I am also no professional. I'm just doing what I can and I try to bring it to you. Audio visualization, what is it? It is simply if sound is made visible. You probably know the level meters or frequency analyzers of your hi-fi stereo, your MP3 player, or whatever sound device. And as Blender is a 3D animation software, it is just logical that there is a way to turn sound into visual graphics, if this makes any sense. And this is what we want to do in this series. I don't know how many parts it will have. It will be a tutorial series of X parts. And I decided to make the first parts of this tutorial in such a way that there's not such pretty results at the end. Yeah, in fact, they will be quite ugly. But this is because I want to separate the description of the function from making it pretty. See it like this: if you build a house, you don't paint the house while building it. And I see many people distracted. I see many people confused by tutorials in which the teacher, to say it so, wants to teach the function and making stuff pretty at once. And so we will first get into the functions and then we will make it colorful and shiny and everything. What we will come up after this tutorial with is this here. This is the result. Doesn't look exactly pretty. What did I tell you? This is basically a level meter. This cube will go, this one here will go up and down, will scale upwards if the sound gets louder. And when the sound is quiet, it will be just flat. This is what we want to accomplish today. So let's get right into it. We go into the front view by pressing 1. Oh, I forgot something. We have to turn the screencast keys on, so you see here what I am typing and which mouse button I am pressing. This is very, very convenient. So you see N. Okay, and we have the front view and we don't want perspective, so we press 5 to go into orthographic view. And we want to get this cube up here. So you see I already changed the timeline, which is usually down here, into a video sequence editor. And we need to do this to get sound into our Blender scene so we can hear it. It would be quite, boring if you couldn't hear music playing while this stuff here is wiggling up and down. So what I'm doing now is just to make you hear something. So I press add here and select sound, and I already navigated to a folder where I have a song of my music project Wilma Poppen. I double click it to get it in here, and if we press Alt A now, enough. It crackles a bit. I don't know why. Something is eating up resources on my computer, or it is just too heavy for Blender to decode this wave audio in 32 bits. So this is just so that you can hear something. You saw there's nothing moving here. So we make this window down here bigger and turn it into a graph editor. The graph editor was once, if I remember it right, called the F-curve editor because you added F-curves in here, and this is what we just want to do. We don't want to do it by hand, but we want to have it sound driven. So we press here again and we have our numeric input again, and we need it because we want to animate the Z-scale, the vertical scale, we want to animate the vertical scale, slips of tongues everywhere, of this cube. And we can do this in two ways. We could animate the scale or the dimensions. I prefer the dimensions because scale has proven to be somewhat tricky in some situations, so I always stick with the dimensions when animating stuff. We insert a keyframe and make sure we have the marker on the first frame. We insert a keyframe by pressing Y and having a mouse over the dimensions fields. We also want to split up this window now and make the lower part a timeline. We don't need the timeline really, but we need the controls so we can always get back to the first frame if something goes wrong. So now we have curves here for lines, because it's nothing on it, for all dimensions, X dimension, Y, Z. We only need the Z, so we delete the two ones here. And we select this one, make it sure that it is selected, and then we go on this menu here, key, bake sound to F curves, and we select the sound again. And now you see we have a curve here. And if we now press Alt A, you see with a bit of crackling that this scales in the Z dimension according to the sound. Not enough, but we will get to this later. What is more of a problem, we go back to the first frame. What is more of a problem is that it scales in both directions, downwards and upwards. So how do we fix this? A good friend of mine, I showed it to him, and he said that's alright, because he wanted to make a frequency analyzer and he found it quite funny that it was going up and down. But we want it to go only up, and we want, especially we want this plane, it is totally flat because here is no sound. This is absolutely correct. We want it to be here on the ground line. For this we have to set the object origin to this point. So we manually set the dimension of the cube in Z to 2 again. And let's see. This is the object origin. It is the point around which everything evolves, works in Blender for this object. For example, if you rotate it, it rotates around there. What we want is that it rotates around a point in the middle of the bottom plane of the bottom face of this cube. So how do we get this done? Actually, now it would be quite easy, but let's say the 3D cursor was somewhat off. Let's click left here, so the 3D cursor is no longer there. So how do we get it in the middle down here again? We could press Shift C and it would bring it totally out of place here, but the 3D cursor would be there again. But we want to make this a bit different, and so let's place the 3D cursor off again. and press Tab to get into edit mode. And make sure we have the face selection. Deselect all faces. Look from the bottom. Select the bottom face. And then say Shift S. Cursor to selected. So it snaps in the middle of this face. Just where it was before. So now we want to get this yellow origin point here in the middle. We want to get it there. And for that, we can use a quite hard shortcut. It is, I think, Control Shift Alt S or something like that, or A. I don't know. And sorry, but we can here in the tool panel under edit we can set origin, and here we see Shift Control Alt C it would have been, and we say origin to 3D cursor, and now we see we have our little yellow orange dot down here, and if we get into the front view again and say rotate, it rotates around there. This is exactly what we want. And now see what happens if we press Alt A. This is absolutely perfect. Just that it doesn't size enough. It doesn't get tall enough. So what we could do now, we could change the X and the Y dimension to something smaller and go closer with the camera, and so it would look perfect. But what I want to show you is the way I do it usually, because usually you don't want too tiny objects, and this is quite okay. What we can do is set this to 1 and this to 1. This looks already a bit better, but we want it to get taller. Let's see it in the 3D from the camera view. Excuse me. And we want it to go up here at least. So how do we do this? Now it gets a bit complicated. We make this one bigger, so yeah. And we need the F-curve properties for this F-curve, and we need to add a modifier. A modifier modifies the F-curve. Very surprising. So we say add modifier, and we select an envelope. The envelope modifier has a lot of settings which we do not need right now, and you do not need to know about it. Maybe I will make, of course, I will make a tutorial about the F-curve envelope modifier one day and tell you about all those settings, but for now we just want to focus on what we need to make this curve bigger and thus this cube grow higher. What we need is to add a point, and we do this preferably when the frame is on 1. We need frame 1. We add a point and we make this a bit bigger. So this is the position, the frame where this one is. This is 1. And this is the minimum value. It can be negative, and this is the maximum value, which must be, no, not necessarily positive. But I didn't want to get distracted. So what do? We have to get both of those values bigger. This in the minus direction, this in the plus direction, and so that it fills, that it goes right up here. You have to keep in mind that if you have a 1 here, if you have a minus 1 here, you must have a positive 1 here. If you have a minus 5 here, you must have a positive 5 here. Otherwise, let me show it to you. if I put a 5 in here, your 0 here is no longer the 0. So the cube is from the start bigger. You see, it is no flat. If we put this to -5, it is again 0, and our curve is much bigger. And you see, we have almost what we want. It just peeks out of it. So we have to do a bit of tweaking. We put this on -4 and this on +4. And we scroll through the timeline and go to the highest peak. It is still too much, so let's put in here a 3.9 and a 3.9 here. Yeah, -3.9. It's still too much. So let's put a 3.7. I think 7 would be okay. Here. And have a look. Still a bit too much at the peaks. So let's put it to 3.5. -3.5 plus 3.5. Remember, it's still too much. This is annoying. Let's get it to 3.3. This looks nice. Still too much. We put it to 3 and 3. And now, yeah, let's keep it like this. So let's get back to the first plane, to the first frame, and okay, I think this is it. Yeah, this is basically what we wanted to accomplish for today. I hope you got everything. If there's anything unclear, write it down in the comments. Please, again, if you are a Blender newbie, learn first about the basics of Blender. There's enough videos out there. And in the next part of this tutorial series, we will come up with this here. Still doesn't look pretty, but it is some more. It is a so-called frequency analyzer. It is basically what we've done here, a level meter, but for 16 frequency bands. So yeah, see you in the next video where I maybe am not so nervous as I am now. Yeah, and let me know how you liked it. And if you liked it, you can subscribe to the channel so you don't miss future parts of this tutorial and other tutorials, because there will not only be tutorials on Blender, but also on FL Studio, web design, maybe programming in C++ and more. So, see you next time in the next tutorial.